I'm back, and I'm very excited to have uh, a new friend that's going to come on and chat with us about Hyrox specific training, the value of doing it right, and what things constitute being right or wrong. We have a lot of different ideas of what we might want to discuss. So if you're into the new game, you're into Hyrox training, this is a great opportunity for you to get some insights from some people that are in the business. Now, um, there are opportunities to comment, and if you're listening right now and you've got an opportunity to comment, please do. And if you have questions, we will try to address them. But with no further ado, I think I want to introduce to you Constantine. You got to tell me how to pronounce your last name.
It's Mouzakitis, and it took me this long to figure it out as well, so don't worry about it.
It's funny. I used to have a co-host. Her name was Zoe. What's this say here? Without. All right. Zoe, uh, we did I don't know how many different episodes. I still cannot pronounce her last name. I
They're
think we
tough, man.
actually
Greek is a whole different language, you know?
I think we actually even had a contest to see who can actually pronounce it properly, and it was just brutal. But long story short,
Yeah.
I'm glad to have you, and you're in New York,
That's
and
right.
you
New York City.
and you are coaching, training high rocks athletes, and you are a legitimately organized high rocks affiliate. Is that right?
I am all those things, and then up until recently, where I also became the Northeast brand manager for Hyrox here in New York, and I oversee mostly the New York tri-state area, which includes obviously New Jersey and Connecticut. So a lot of the different people that you've been in contact with in the past who are our affiliate gyms here locally, I have contact with now as well. But I got into Hyrox mostly because as a trainer, I was trying to figure out a way how to engage a little bit differently with my members and my clients. I don't own the gym that I train out of, but I just thought it would be really fun to kind of put a goal in front of them. And I was looking for an event for a long time, obviously, that I knew everybody could do. My clients are mostly general population. They're not young athletes. They're not even older athletes for that matter. Until Hyrox gave them the opportunity to express themselves like athletes and train like athletes, which is really really fun. And then I just grew to love it myself. Doing the events myself and getting to know the community through Hyrox, it's infectious. It's just unbelievable, amazing community.
I find it interesting, and obviously enough, you could see this is an old man. I've been around a long time. Fitness related activities are really trendy. They go through these spurts where something gets a lot of energy, and we believe it's going to be the end all, last forever type of activity, and then something else comes along, and then something else comes along. And I got into obstacle course racing a while back when it first became, at least in my mind, popular. I didn't know what OCR was. I always referred to it as mud racing or whatever. And until I met Hunter, and Hunter came to me and was explaining to me that he was quote unquote a professional obstacle course racing athlete. And I thought I
Right.
didn't think there was such a thing. What do you mean? And I remember it's not uncommon for me to Google athletes that I've met where they approach me, and I just want to see who they are before I engage. And I started noticing all this, cover Hunter, on different magazine covers and things like this, and some photographs that maybe he cared not to discuss. But I started working with him, and I realized that wow, this thing's big. This is getting big. And then I thought this thing's on fire. This thing's going to grow to crazy money. And I started thinking about the potential for the professional athletes to make a lot of money. And no, it just kind of never came to fruition. And maybe it still will, but so far it seems like it's on more of a downtrend than it is on an upswing. And then introduce Hyrox, and I have to say that even being a little shy, a little gun shy, I see the potential. I see the
Hmm.
potential, and I think that the people that are running the organization, who, by the way, I've never met, are being a little bit more careful. And the growth is huge. It's starting to really get out there. I should tell you, I have clients on all parts of the world, and they're engaged in Hyrox competitions. Some of them just learning about it. Some of them have been competing for a bit. Some folks in the UK, they've been on it for a bit, and um, it's getting to be a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that you nailed it with a couple of points there as well. One of those being, in the OCR world, right? Obstacle course racing, it's it doesn't really have the capacity to be a spectator sport. You can, but trying to get crowds of people outside where these events usually take place is a little bit tougher. Whereas with Hyrox, obviously, it's a little bit more arena style, and everybody can be there. So we do have a good amount of spectators. People's friends and families, loved ones are all coming to with them to these races and cheering them on. My first race, actually, I thought that it was quite unique because I've been working out and training for years, and I don't normally have a crowd of people cheering me on when I'm doing deadlifts or when I'm doing squats or anything like that. And I kind of was going through the race, and I was like just going through a group of exercises. People are watching me work out basically for time and cheering me on. And I thought, wow, this is really really unique. But I could definitely see the value in it from there. But for all of my clients, all of my friends that participate, and the last June event that we had in New York, just to be clear, I was with a group. We were about 40 people that came from the same gym facility, OG Training Academy out here on Long Island where I live now, and just an amazing group of people that trained together for months and months, and we just poured our heart into it and did it together as a team, and it was really amazing to cheer them on and have them cheer me on and really just kind of push it. So it's really more of that community kind of style. It's a little bit harder to do, I think, in that OCR world.
Well, yeah. To take it even a step further, I came up when triathlon became a thing. I'm talking about the early days of triathlon, and I actually had even
Well,
got
that's
involved.
how it goes. It started back with like the marathons back in like the 70s, and that was really huge. And then the 80s and the 90s kind of brought through like a triathlon phase. And you were right to say that it kind of goes through these phases. OCR had hit its day, I think, and now we're kind of moving indoors a little bit
Right.
more into like this arena style
Yeah.
fitness.
Well, what I was getting ready to say is that um, I ended up being involved in triathlon pretty heavily. I produced the first professional race for CBS Sports in 1984 on
Wow.
the island of Kauai, and it was on Super Bowl channel, Super Bowl weekend. We had a half-hour program, and the difficulty from a spectator perspective with triathlon has always been a thing. And I've seen attempts where they try to turn it into more of an arena sport, which didn't really bode well.
Hmm.
But you go watch a triathlon, and what you end up seeing is they show up and then they're gone for 4 hours. They come back. It's like
It's
time to
true.
go get
Also,
lunch.
yeah,
We
it's
got
a it's a
somebody
tough it's a
visiting,
tough spectator sport.
and we got somebody visiting. Is Daniel Hickman. Hello,
Hmm.
Daniel.
Yeah, I know Daniel. I met him in Chicago, as a matter of fact. He's got a great podcast where he's interviewing a lot of the elite athletes and other athletes and trainers in the space. Good dude. Yeah, I love me some Daniel Hickman. He's a good guy.
Yeah, Joshua Cruz is someone that I've worked with in the past. He just showed up too. Actually, he's doing my
Cool.
marathon training program right now, and he's working towards a PR. Anyway, long story
Nice.
short, High Rocks, it's a thing, and we were going to discuss various approaches to it. So, I'm sure you have a few questions for me, but I also have some questions for you. So let's start with um, I come to you, I'm fresh with it, never done it before. Thank you so much. Read my book. Um, here I am. Let's just build me a different case. Let's say that I'm 45 years old. I've been training in the gym, and you introduce me to High Rocks. Where do you take me? What's it look like?
Well, that's probably going to be a 2 to 3 week conversation,
Yeah.
right? Because first, I'm going to have to make you comfortable with the race and the idea of racing in that kind of environment. The initial reaction, I think, for a lot of people, I'm 49 myself, and I jump at opportunities like this, but that's few and far between. The majority of people are intimidated usually right away, and they just need to kind of be walked through the process a little bit and explain that these are movements, natural, holistic movements that everybody can do. And your level of fitness is only going to define, how well you do in the competition later on. Aside from that, I always let people know this is a community style event, something where everybody can participate. Not everybody is going to be a top athlete. One of the things I like going back to all the time, I say 50,000 people every single year enter the New York City Marathon, and I doubt that there's very many of them that assume they're going to beat Kipchoge. And that's probably true, right? I've done the marathon twice myself, the New York City Marathon only once. And I don't have these ideas in my head that I'm gonna compete on that level. But it's important to understand that it's great to test yourself and test your own fitness, and then always remember that the data that we have, through Hyrox, you can go back on and actually create a strategy and a plan to even get better. So there is some movement there. Aside from that, it's really more about making sure that they have some sort of a running base. And if not, then we have to build it, right? Half of the race, there's 16 stations. 8 of those stations are running, and 1,000 meters at a time, especially when, you're gassing out at some of these like heavier stations, the sled push, the sled pull. For example, even the burpee broad jumps for a lot of people where they get gassed out and having to run directly after that. There's a specific style of training that we can get into that I think, some people neglect, during the training because there are different levels. Beyond that, understanding how much time we have between that conversation and an actual race that they need to register and what that training is going to look like, and then also manage expectations. How often can they get into the gym to do it, right? Not everybody is a trainer or an athlete that spends hours and hours a day in the gym and can work on that level. Most people have, regular jobs and 9 to 5s that they have to take care of families. So it's a much larger conversation, and that conversation can change, from day to day with different people. But at the end, I know that the second that somebody registers for a race and they join the community just to start training, it takes them to a whole new world. And then they're hooked, right? They love the community, they love the accountability, they love the fact that they're, involved with a group of people that are like-minded and want to achieve, bigger, better things. And then once they actually get to the race, that's when I know they're hooked. And they come away from that, feeling such an amazing like feeling of achievement. And I know so many people that instantly want to just sign up for the next one.
Well, I have to tell you that what you just shared is the type of commentary I used to get from people that were going into OCR. And so what I felt was the big attraction for OCR was that it was non-judgmental. Anybody shows up, if you decide to walk the course, nobody's in a bag on you for it. And I have to share that this is so far outside my wheelhouse. I deal with competitive athletes, and I have run marathons and I've done triathlons back in the day myself. And if you saw somebody walking on a marathon course, you'd stop and ask them if they're okay. You need some help. You okay? Because it's a time trial. You're running against the clock, and I see that. And again, the community of people that I deal with in this sport are competitive. They come to me because they're trying to eke out that last little bit and try to
Yep.
refine their skills. And they're coming to me hoping I can help them with that. And so what you're speaking of, I don't run into a lot. It's not common for
Hmm.
someone that's just kind of getting into it, trying to feel their way around, that would seek me out. And at the flip side, by the way, that wouldn't be something that would be inappropriate, because I deal with people as they come. If you're in this level of fitness,
Hmm.
I'm going to try to take you to this level of fitness. If you're making these kind of mistakes, I'm going to try to erase those mistakes to help you become a better athlete, regardless of who you are or what you're trying to achieve. So, it for some it might seem a little intimidating to engage me, but it's really not like that. I mean, first of all, my hat's off to anybody that can do this race and throw down hard, because at 71 years old, I'm not even about to go and attempt this. And I know there's guys out there that are my age that are doing it, but I'm not that guy. Man's got to know his limitations, right?
Maybe not this year, Richard. Maybe not
Yeah.
this year. Maybe we'll get you next
Yeah.
year.
Well, it's like people say, you can do it. You can do it. I've done it. I've already had my day in the sun where I'm out there pounding myself in the ground. I used to tell people, you could do anything you want to me for 24 hours, but once I put my head on the pillow, don't come back asking me to do anything else. I'm done. So,
Hmm.
yeah, but I
You
just,
know, I
go
do
ahead.
think that with a lot of these races that are coming out, Hyrox especially, we're going to have a lot more um, people, not professional athletes, that are seeking this kind of information, seeking this kind of advice and training, and I think that that's going to change for you as well, and for your business, as well, because even though you're mostly working with the top tier of athletes now, there's going to be people that want to be competitive in their own right, whether it's for an age group category or whether it's going to be just because they want to PR, their next, High Rocks race, and they want to fix those little tweaks, right? Those little nuances that come through. I have no doubt that that's going to start becoming more of the norm because data has become more important.
Well, I could tell you, I'm just going to correct myself. First of all, I think anybody that's going to engage in some fashion of intensity and fitness should have a VO2 max test done. And understand how your body responds to work and where you should be applying yourself from a standpoint of intensity or recovery. And there's no better way
Mhm.
to do that than through a VO2 max test, in my opinion. And the other
Right.
consideration is a lot of people are limited by the mistakes they make. They injure themselves and trying to get their run game on, especially in an event where the 1 kilometer is, you're trying to go for it. And the intensity, it magnifies the errors. So your potential to injure yourself is greater. So,
Hmm.
and as we were kind of talking off screen here about running shoes, relying on a shoe to save you from yourself is just a bad idea. The shoes won't do that for you. You have to correct your mechanics to avoid the potential for error. And so
Hmm.
coming to see someone like me that's going to help you learn to run correctly, and yes, there is a way to run correctly, is probably the first thing you should do. And
Right.
why wait till you get injured? Why wait till you call me because you're plagued with plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis, knee issues, hip issues, and then we got to try to bring you back from all these mistakes and then try to correct them. Get it done. Get it done right. Get it done
Right.
right up front.
Richard, you said earlier that I was going to have some questions for you, and of course I do. And one that just kind of came to mind, as you're saying that, is, do you find that there's some sort of a standard time that people are correcting some of their bad behavior when it comes to running, with your help, obviously, with your guidance? Is that something that somebody can do it within a cycle, let's say like within a season of running?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So try to appreciate this, if you will. The thing that I would bang my drum about is the experience I've had working with runners. And what I mean by
Hmm.
that is, if you're not aware of it, I have traveled all over the United States over the past decade and
Hmm.
working with groups of athletes that I've never met and with all sorts of concerns and issues, and some of them just trying to eke out a little bit faster time. Most of them are just plagued with reoccurring injuries and they're just really fed up with it and they want to get a solution. And they come in
Hmm.
all shapes and sizes, from young kids to older adults. And I have found that once they've understood what mistakes they were making and how to correct them and set about correcting those mistakes, that the turnaround is pretty quick. And then you can make mistakes in the corrections. You can maybe, and I tell people this all the time, one of the greatest concerns that I've learned about other people is being able to alter their perception of what they're doing. Because you may listen to me all day long, it all makes sense. You read the book, you read another book, you saw YouTube videos, and in your head you think, yeah, I understand exactly what I'm supposed to do, but you can't manufacture it. And you might
Right.
think you're manufacturing it, and in reality you're not. And so until you get an altered perception of your work and correct what you think you're doing, it takes longer. So
Yeah.
you may figure it out sooner or later, but if you can alter your perception up front, I'd say the turnaround to becoming a better runner, I'd say within a month. And I listen. I can tell you stories that'll blow your mind with people that have contacted me and gone from being very frustrated with reoccurring injuries to, well, he's probably listening to this, but we're friends. We could share it. I'll give you an example. Is I'm sure you know Kevin Gregory.
Yes.
Okay, Kevin and I used to coach Kevin years ago, back when the OCR days were going, and he was after Tough Mudder and was trying to do the 24-hour thing. And as you know, he's a big guy. Here's a guy
Hmm.
running about, on average, 220, 225, something like that. And he was running between 18, 20 miles a week at best.
Wow.
And when we worked together, after him coming to see me a few times and, having this guidance, I got him up to 100 miles a week without issue. And you can take a 220-pound guy that can run 100 miles a week without being injured, and generally in a relatively minimal shoe. That says something. That says that the running mechanics made a big difference for him. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to drag on about it, but I can tell you that
Is all the
absolutely.
training?
Go ahead, I'm
No,
sorry.
please drag on about it. This is valuable information. Is most of the training then happening on a treadmill, or do you take a lot of these guys
No,
out on
well,
the road
so
and
so
stuff and actually?
yeah, so the path that I take of these last few years is when someone comes to see me, typically it's not just about running. They also are going to get a VO2 max test, and
Mhm.
generally because I recommend it. And what I'll do is I'll first guide them through the corrections. I'll video analysis on the treadmill, take 3 different views, shoot the video, throw it up on a big screen through my analysis software, show them what I see, show them why this isn't supposed to be like that, and how to correct it. And generally within a half an hour, I can get them doing the right thing. I mean, it's evident. People standing there go, "Wow, that's completely different than what he was doing 10 minutes ago." And then once they get that wrapped up, then we'll do a VO2 max test. And then after the VO2 max test, now I've got some clinical analysis of the energy costs relative to task. But then what I like to do is I take them outside and I'll have them run on the road. And I got like a 1.3 mile circuit, and
Mhm.
I'll get alongside them on my chase bike, and I'm collecting the data. I'm looking at what their heart rate's doing, what their pace is doing. I'm looking at the way they're approaching the work. And then what I do, I call it trust but verify. So we have the information from the clinical analysis, but I want to see in real world how realistic that information is. I may adjust. I might find that, you know what, you can't sustain this particular heart rate. The test said you could, but I don't like it. I think we need to go a little lower. And then what we try to do is modify the outcome,
Mhm.
so that when they go home, they have very good deliverables. But and so listen,
Mhm.
across the board, it doesn't make a difference whether you're 8 or 80, or you're competitive or otherwise. This is really solid information that's deliverable. You could take it home and put it to work, and then it's on you. I mean, I've seen people fail. It frustrates the hell out of me when I see someone that I've touched or worked with and see them running around in these newfangled bouncy ass cushioned shoes. It hurts my heart to watch that. I say, what the hell, dude? Were you not paying attention? I mean, you were all about it. You were like, yeah, I got it, I got it, I got it. You showed me you can do it, and then you went off and you got weak and listened to your buddy who said, oh man, these things, Ilya Kajobi can run a sub 3 hour or 2 hour marathon wearing these bad boys, and it kills me. It does.
Yeah, it's a shame, and there's so much information out there now, especially with social media and the whole online equation. But there's some good that's come from that as well. I think that people are getting more knowledgeable when it comes to pacing, working a little bit smarter, working within their means. Zone two, running is better understood now. I think just because of the amount of people that are talking about it and discussing it, and how to actually build that engine. But there's so much more to running, and there's so much more to building that capacity. And now, even with Hyrox, there's conversations. For the most part, I think that anyone that's in the community has already discussed it, but compromised running techniques as well. So there's all these terms being thrown at people
Yeah.
all the time, and they all have value, right? But it's not just one over the other, right? Like how to program those things within somebody's workouts really kind of depends on their own ability, right? And what they need. If somebody's got a really good running base, for example, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, with them on building more capacity on that level, but they might need some compromised running techniques and kind of go through that. And we're not going to live in that area. Right, we're gonna pick out some points, maybe some weaknesses, some chinks in the armor, and focus a little bit on those. And then obviously throw in one, maybe 2 times a week, depending on how close we are to the race. We'll focus on a little bit of compromised running, and I put some emphasis on that only because through my experience and what I experienced going out there as a rookie, my first time pushing that sled at 220, just because that is within my wheelhouse. But then going from, a 4 minute, first run to a 640, run right after the sled push, that doesn't build consistency within the race, and you have to work smarter within your capacity. So you're right. Working with somebody to bring those levels down and bring that heart rate down is going to be super important. Get people to slow down just to speed up.
Well, I have to push back a little bit. And
Okay, I love it. I love it.
so, first of all, you're right about a lot of things. And one of them is that there's a lot of conversation about terms and comments that become very popular in the social media arena. One of them of late that gets tossed around quite a lot is, as you referred to, zone two training. Now, I don't ever prescribe zone two training to anyone. And I do respect that there is a value in the lower intensity heart rate style, whatever, whether it be on a bike, whether it be running or whatever. But from a standpoint of running, to spend or dedicate a great length of time very specific to that level of intensity is a massive mistake, in my opinion. Now, there are some people that will
Hmm.
want to disagree with me, but you have to understand where this all comes from. So, zone two training is typically something that's found in the cycling world. So, when
Okay.
you get yourself in a position where the load you're bearing is linear and it has not got time to leave the ground or otherwise, it's a function of force and linear path, right? So you could spend hours at a lower intensity and get good value in the musculature. And again, there's definitely call for in that arena. But there's also so much that's already been done from a coaching perspective, from research in that world, in cycling and triathlon and also marathon running, where these periodized approaches to training, they fit very nicely. Enter Hyrox, which in my opinion is more of an anaerobic activity. You're not really going to be aerobic if you tend to set a PR. So you need to make friends with that anaerobic environment. And that means you're going to spend a considerable amount of time, whether you like it or not, at a higher level of intensity, and you need to teach your body how to deal with that. And if you're hoping that by spending a lot of times in zone two, that you're condition yourself to increasing your threshold greater and greater and greater, you're pissing up a rope. I'm just telling you. I've done VO2 max tests on literally, it scares me to say it, multiple thousands of athletes from all walks of life. So the data that I've collected, cause and effect relationships with what they're trying to achieve and what they ended up able to do and so on, it's painted a pretty stark picture. And I could tell you that what I've written recently, the concept of training the dark side, which is basically how to make friends with this anaerobic environment, is a big deal because you don't have two energy systems. You don't have this lower intensity aerobic energy system and this other energy system, which is anaerobic on the other side. There's one energy system, and you need to be able to develop the entire spectrum of that energy capacity so that you can pull the trigger on whatever is necessary at whatever time because you've conditioned yourself to be comfortable doing so. And a prime example of that, and I just got off the phone with him a couple hours ago, is Hunter McIntyre. You know, yep. I've worked with Hunter over the last 7 years. And when I met him, he was an endurance athlete. And his threshold was pushing around 160 beats per minute. At 160 beats per minute, he'd be in 66% fat utilization. And he could probably, well, I know he could because I've done it with him. I've run him for a half marathon on my chase bike and tracked the metrics, kept him under a 6-minute pace for 13 miles and be aerobic the entire way. You know, flip the coin, and the type of training he does now, even coming through CrossFit and where he is today, world champion, his threshold's down to about 130 beats per minute. But his capacity to tolerate that anaerobic metabolism is seriously impacted. He can take a beating better than most.
And where does that ability come from, Richard? Where does that ability? Is it a natural kind of ability that somebody just has? Is it grit?
It's what, just like Zone 2 is a physiological adaptation. Anaerobic training is also a physiological adaptation, and it comes down to adaptations in your musculature and your ability to process that lactate. And so I don't want to go into a great big science dialogue with you, but I can tell you that there's a couple metabolic transporters that are very unique to moving lactate out of the working muscle, and it depends on the type of training you've done. And this is not something that's spoke of very often because there's just not a lot of high-end research that exists in these new sports, you know, and I'm including OCR. I mean, if you go back in triathlon, you can go back 40 years and think about all the research that's been conducted, or marathon training or cycling. There's a lot of great minds that have been pulling their hair out trying to figure out, you know, how to manipulate the Rubik's Cube to find the greatest athlete. But there's not that kind of research and money that is conducted in these early or these novel sports. And so everything that you read or hear that's associated with energy transfer in sport is commonly derived from those other sports. So it just doesn't quite fit the mold. I've worked with professional boxers. I used to do work with the middleweight champion of the world. I also worked with a featherweight champion of the world. And I've seen these guys come up and they were going out and running 10 miles at a really easy pace to develop their aerobic capacity. And I pulled them out of it. I said, what are you doing? You're going to fight for 3 minutes and you're going to get a break. And then you're going to fight for another 3 minutes. What the hell's running 10 miles got to do with that? So introduce interval-based training, going in high intensity, sustaining work for a great period of time, getting great recovery. What does Hyrox sound like to you? It's
a whole lot of the same.
What's this? I made the switch from Zone 2 training. Nice. I like it. Here we go.
We got some questions.
Well, I didn't. I'm going to pan over that. Let me bring this up so we can share it. So.
Cool.
Can you see this?
I can. Okay. There you go. So that's pretty valid.
All right, here's another one. So
how would you go about answering that?
So, well, here we go. So same type of things. These are people that have kind of broke the mold, gotten away from, actually, wasting a lot of time, and this is going to hurt a lot of people's souls. I know it is. But wasting a lot of time doing exercise that is just not going to pay the rent.
Yeah.
And let me share this with you, and I'm gonna shut up and let you go on. I look at it like this: there's three E's. This is probably wrong. Three E's, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first one, where from a training perspective, broad stroke, is you need to be effective. And effective means that when you have a constrained amount of time to prepare yourself, whether it be leading up to a competition, whether it be just trying to get through your workday and fitting in your workouts, you have a controlled amount of time that you can dedicate to your training. Spending time doing things that don't pay the bills is just not being effective. The next thing you have to worry about is the things that you are doing, you're doing them correctly. So you need to be efficient. Okay? So getting back to running mechanics, you want to learn to do it correctly, because when you do it correctly, it comes in the third E, which is economy. Excuse me. When you're efficient, you lower your cost of effort. You lower the cost of work. You're going to improve your ability to recover. And so that's my global scheme when I work with anyone. I want to cover those three E's. I don't want to waste time doing something that's not going to pay the rent. I want to make sure we're developing as much efficiency as possible, and then the outcome is becoming economical. Excuse me.
That's great advice. I love it. And I hope that people watching this are taking heed to it. I want to bring it kind of back to just real time right now. We have the New York Hyrox race coming up on June 1st. That puts us at just under, 20 weeks, I think, from right now. I don't know exactly how long that is. But in that time, how much of this anaerobic capacity do you think that somebody can actually work if they're doing it efficiently and effectively during that time? If they're spending a good amount of time within that, still touching a lot of the different stations that Hyrox allows, but mostly for the running, because I do find that the majority of people don't don't struggle much within the stations alone, but coupled with having to do a kilometer effort every time. Um, how do you find that time period? How can they be most effective
Well,
generally?
I can tell you that recently I posted on my YouTube channel, incidentally, a little video clip about the value of flow training versus traditional style training from a running perspective. And
Hmm.
what I showed was that I think the example I used was I took like about an hour and 15 time block. And I showed where someone would approach that work. And so realize again that we're talking about training, we're not talking about racing. So in the training mode that I'm speaking of, we dedicated 10 minutes initially to skill. And what that means is that, first of all, excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. First of all, we work on making sure we're landing correctly. Cadence, on the time. Make sure that our frequency is correct. Then we start building into some efforts where we're testing our speed. Excuse me. And then once we've settled in, we basically got everything humming, we may drop down into an aerobic pace for 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes, we might bump it up. We'll just say, okay, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to make a move. We might dedicate 4 minutes to taking our heart rate up to, say, and I hate the term anaerobic threshold, but let's just say that we're taking the intensity up to where now we're dipping into that lactate a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Go about 4 minutes. Intuitively, we identify that, you know what, I'm going to back off a little bit now. This is getting a little much. Recover a little bit into aerobic metabolism for a while, and then maybe swing back up into the anaerobic metabolism again, maybe for a greater length of time, or maybe for a greater intensity for the same length of time. And the timeline is just indiscriminate. It could be just, I need to get out. I feel pretty good. I'll stay. And then just kind of rolling in and out of the intensity to the point where even somewhere along the way, you're going to touch like VO2 max effort. You're going to punch it out. Maybe do 30 seconds to a minute hard. Recover well. And then in the scheme of things, after you've gone through a total of 75 minutes worth of training. If you look at the tail of the tape, the dedication to the specific stimuluses, the greater end of it was aerobic. And mind
Right.
you, I said it earlier, I'm not saying that aerobic conditioning is not a good thing. Certainly it
Hmm.
has its value. And don't even go there with me right now, but the point of the matter is you touched all the bases. You've
Hmm.
completely covered the entire spectrum of your energy system. And so
Hmm.
that makes you better prepared for what comes your way. So let's just say hypothetically your game plan. Strategy is a big deal, right? My game plan is I'm
Hmm.
going to go out hard because I know so and so who I intend to beat. If I take him out hard and he
You're
chases me,
talking about Hunter again.
no, I'm not. I'm talking commonly, but I've done this with Hunter. I'm going to
Yeah.
take you out into deep water because I know you're going to get so acidic that it's going to crush the rest of your race. And then I'm going to feather back and get into my mojo and then continue to march until I can get into a better place.
Right on.
But the idea being that you're equipped to um, answer any call or control the way things are going across the board. I've seen people where I've worked with them coaching, and I'm giving them this whole structure of training. They get to a race, the gun goes off, and all that shit goes out the window. They're just
Yeah.
trying to chase the guy in front of them, so now their training plan is dictated by the guy that they're chasing, you
Yeah.
know, and he might be playing with them to begin with. Or you go out too hot, and you think you just got to go, and the guy biding his time behind you is watching you crumble, and eventually he's going to pass you. So I'm just saying that when
Hmm.
you develop your entire energy system effectively, you can answer any call. You can go out hot, you can take it easy, you can hit it in the middle because you've conditioned yourself to be capable of that. And so there's got to be a time where you make a decision that you're going to go into the paint. You're going to put some intensity into it.
Yeah.
And if you don't condition yourself for that in your training, and a lot of people what they'll do is they segregate. Monday is going to be my aerobic day. Tuesday I'm going to do the intensity. And then Wednesday I'm going to, whatever. Sorry, choking like crazy here.
It's okay. It's all right.
So I'm done screaming.
That's that information is great because I think that we compartmentalize some of this training a little bit too much and don't understand that if you're going to be running a specific race, especially like a high rocks, you should probably train as if you're training for that race, which means that you're going to have to test yourself, like you said, within those energy systems throughout a workout, not necessarily split it up like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm doing this because you don't have that kind of time on race day. You have for most people an hour and a half for the elites, 60 or under at this point, which kind of gets me to the next point, which is, we're seeing a lot of, these new records coming through in high rocks and those times really starting to come down for everybody across the board. It's not just, obviously some of the people at the very, very top are making some big strides, but across the board, I think those times are definitely coming down. Is that an example of just the training is becoming a little bit easier to kind of program and understand now that we've had a few cycles of this type of an event that's out there? Is it just the specific people that are racing that are just getting better at it themselves? Is it kind of like a combination of both those things? Because I can imagine obviously 26.2 miles in a marathon, anything can go wrong at any point, and it usually does somewhere around mile 17 for most people, including myself. But the same thing for a high rocks, right? There's 16 different stations, 8 kilometers of running. Anything can go wrong at any time. But all in the training, is there something that you believe? I know that I know for a fact that you've thought about this as far as those times coming down. So I would love to hear your opinion on that.
Well, first of all, I think what's going to happen is the sport evolves and the times are going to continue to drop.
Hmm.
Excuse me. I've had this conversation with Hunter many times where I threw out a prediction that was probably a little bit more aggressive than is realistic. I told him 45 minutes. and he barked at me, no freaking way in your lifetime is that ever going to happen. So I'm 71. I know what my lifetime looks like. But here we are at 52 minutes. I absolutely believe that we'll break 50.
Hmm.
And how much below that, I don't know. And the other consideration, and that's due in part to more effective training, better skill sets, smarter decisions about training as a whole. This is going to come through experience and education. But the other consideration is as the money grows, you're going to start seeing athletes enter the arena that maybe never thought about coming because it just wasn't going to be enough money for them to compete or dedicate their time. So money's a big part of it. I think that if you get to a place where a world champion pulls down $100,000 at an event, you're going to start seeing some new faces. Um, but I
Yeah.
do believe that I can almost break it down for you. If you could shave 15 seconds off each of your runs, there's your 2 minutes. And
Right.
and I really do believe that that's the probably the first big shift that's going to occur. I have I have athletes I coach in Hyrox, and we pay very close attention to the details. Obviously enough,
Hmm.
and we do training simulations pretty often, where we're basically shooting for effect. We're going to try this approach, slow the run down a little bit, increase the intensity in the exercises, flip the switch, crank up the runs, pull down the intensity in the stations, maybe pull down the intensity at a few of the stations, pick up the runs leading into those stations. We're trying all kinds of variables and just seeing what works. And it's not going to be the same solution for everyone, right? But I found that one
Hmm.
particular athlete that I'm speaking of, we started moving his average pace down on his runs by about 15 seconds apiece, and his overall
Hmm.
time improved by 5 minutes. So now I'm not
Wow.
saying everybody slow down to get faster. I'm just saying in his case, his tolerance for that ensuing lactate production was too high. And then when he feathered it back a little bit, he had a little bit more energy to do the exercises and it paid off. But we're not done. I'm still suggesting that there might be some trimming we could do here and there that would even make him that much more effective. So
Yeah.
I guess to answer your question, I think we haven't seen the best of it yet.
Hmm.
I'm really interested in seeing how the women do. Um, I know Meg Jacoby's a monster. She's doing amazing, and there's a couple other people in the fray that are absolutely threats to her time. And the
Hmm.
times for the women is not that far off from the men. I mean, obviously enough, there's a difference in the amount of weight they're pushing or pulling, but I mean, it's
Hmm.
relative, and so it's entertaining.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Meg. Actually, she's going to be in town doing a little Q&A at one of our affiliate gyms, CrossFit NYC, in the city in Flatiron. And one one of the things that you just mentioned, which was some of these newer athletes coming into the mix once the money starts to come up. There's another piece of that I think on the side of the spectrum, which is now that a lot of the training is coming out and we're getting better at programming athletes specifically for events like this. There's another generation that's coming up behind everyone else that is gonna is gonna train like this all the way through. And when once they get to a point, and I see a lot of younger athletes, 17, 18, and 19 years old, um, even building that capacity and just don't have enough time out there on the road yet to really kind of test themselves on that level. But their training looks a lot like what you just described, just because they're getting these cues from you, from other people in the space that are programming now specifically for Hyrox. And I'm very curious to see how how that changes once we start to usher this new generation, into Hyrox. I know that the CrossFit Games, they've always done a really good job of ushering in that next generation, and who's up and coming, who's next. And even though I don't believe that we're necessarily just there, it's gonna happen, right? High Rocks, for the most part, at least right now, in my opinion, is a little bit aged up, right? We don't really have a lot of the younger athletes, in their early 20s just yet, but they're starting to come through and they're starting to understand the value, of this style of race. The older guys and the older gals like myself, right? I'm 49 years old. I'll be 50 in July. We love the community, right? We're not going to bars and clubs and stuff anymore. We see our friends where we spend majority of our time, right? Run clubs, gyms, high rock specific, training days where, there could be, 20, 30 people all together racing and training. So it's going to be really interesting to see some of these younger athletes come through. Um, Richard, one of the things, and I put this out on Instagram, yesterday and today, and just kind of asking the community what they want answered. Oddly enough, not many people had specific questions, and it's probably only because they didn't realize, where the conversation was going to go here between you and I. But one of the things I think that came up a lot in the responses was, when are we going to see you in New York City? When are you going to do a clinic here in New York? And how do we get you to come down here? Because it's not easy for a lot of New Yorkers to get down to Tennessee, where you're in Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to get you here in New York, and doing a clinic with some of our up and coming athletes here, and giving your good advice and your guidance. So we have to work that out. We have to figure it
So
out.
here's the thing. Um, Obviously, I'm new to Tennessee. I've only been here a couple of years now. Prior to that, I was on the West Coast, and for
Hmm.
30 years I lived in California. And when we were doing these clinics, the majority of the clinics that I did were on the East Coast. So I've
Wow.
done 3 clinics in Vermont, I think 3 clinics in New Jersey, a clinic in Connecticut, Maryland, Chicago, all up the Eastern Seaboard. I've done them in Florida, Georgia. Anyway, here I am now. I thought, well, I'm a lot closer now. It's going to be easier for these folks. And it hasn't been quite like that. It's like people are pushing back to come to Tennessee. Tennessee, by the
Yeah.
way, where I live is freaking amazing. This is such a cool place where I'm at. And had I known, I probably would have moved a lot sooner. But what it takes to get me to come to a locale, wherever it might be, is first of all, enough people interested in having me be there. And because for me to make the trip, typically what I do is I'll come in for a weekend. I usually will fly in, get there like on a Friday, meet my host, see the venue that I'm going to be working out of. And then all of the appointments are preordained. We've already scheduled them because they've already signed up. And then come Saturday morning, we start knocking out the work. What I like to do in a perfect world is I like to do a resting metabolic assessment, because this is something that's never really given much energy. Is what specifically should I be consuming? What is my caloric demand? Because if you're a little south of your energy demands, that brings about catabolism. You start to lose muscle while you're training, and making sure you're getting enough. Forget about what your diet looks like. Are you getting fed well enough? And you'd be surprised how many people I find that are malnourished. They look great. They look amazing. They're not even aware that their energy levels are being challenged until they've been tested.
Wow.
Then what
And
we'll
that's
do,
more from a caloric side, or
yes,
just
yes.
it's caloric side, not a
Yeah, I mean, we
nutrient.
could
Okay.
play with the
Wow.
substrates all day long, and everybody
Hmm.
does because it's such a huge industry in nutrition. But what I
Hmm.
find is the first thing you want to make sure you're doing is get enough food. And then a lot of people are on the assumption they're getting too much food. And most of them, because they want to maintain this lean physique, they undereat. They don't eat enough.
Right.
And I keep bringing his name up only because people know who he is, and they aspire to be as great as a Hunter McIntyre. But I've tested Hunter, I think, 7 different times. And I talked him into a resting metabolic assessment one day, and we found out that he was running about 1,500 calories shy where he should be on a daily basis.
Oh, wow.
And he was consuming 4,500 a day. So he literally needed
Wow.
6,000 calories a day to meet the demands of the type of workouts he was doing on a daily basis. We brought his calories up by 1,000 calories. He got leaner, got stronger, and his power output way improved. He actually dropped a pound by taking in
Wow.
1,000 calories more daily. And so that seems like, what? Really? How? Yeah. And that's not the only time. I've done this, I can't tell you how many different times. But anyway,
Hmm.
depending on the nature of the approach, Hyrox has been a little different because I'm testing on 3 different variables now. I'm
Hmm.
testing running, I'm testing on the rower, and I'm testing on the skier. That takes
Hmm.
a lot of time. And
Yeah.
time is not my friend when I'm on the road, especially when there's a lot of people that want to play.
Yeah.
I've been doing it here exclusively, and I typically won't go past 5 clients because it just takes that long to do all the things we want to do.
Right.
But what your energy demands are on a rower versus a skier are different, and certainly
Right.
different than they would be on the run. So identifying what your energy demands look like on all 3 of those devices allows you to better fine tune the way you're approaching your training.
Hmm.
And the other consideration is that if you find hypothetically that you start to go too deep into the lactate, and I'm trying to be careful not to say lactate threshold, but that's really what I'm saying.
Hmm.
If you can marry up your heart rate to the output on those devices, like how many watts am I generating relative to X heart rate, and then this becomes a comparative number for further training, you start noticing, wow, used to be I could push 250 watts at 145 beats per minute. Now I'm pushing 350 watts at the same heart rate. I've become more economical, right?
Yeah.
So you're producing more for less.
Hmm.
A lot of people will be able to produce more, but it's costing them more.
Yeah.
So they're able to put in the work, but they're actually working harder than they should have to be efficient. And so having that bit of information is powerful stuff. So we do 3
Hmm.
tests, gait analysis, resting metabolic assessment, the running we do, the lectures we do. It takes a lot of time. So far, we haven't done a Hyrox specific visit anywhere. If I did, we'd probably need another day. And
Yeah.
depending on, I think I'd probably have to cap it. Maximum cap would be about 10 people.
Yeah. And you have to split it up kind of like a running day and then maybe like an erg day
No,
or
we get,
something like that.
yeah.
Or
So we do because it just. So here we also introduce heat specific training, which is a whole other can of worms. And
I saw
and
you talking about that recently. I was very interested and very
oh
curious
my
about that.
gosh, it's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Hmm.
If you knew what value there is in being very specific about introducing heat training, you'd
Hmm.
you'd you'd stop talking to me right now and you'd go buy this thing and go to work. It's that
Wow.
powerful. It's like introducing altitude training in a matter of a week and not having ever left, sea level.
Right.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So this
I
is
don't think
something.
there's anyone, yeah, that's really focusing on that, right now. I mean, like the very first time I've ever heard of that was obviously through you, and it's not like something that's just right. You
Yeah.
definitely can't go to Best Buy and just pick up a kit and start going after it.
No,
You're
no.
coming up with stuff like you're building it in the lab right now.
No, let me tell you something. I came across it and I did the research. My wife was going, "What are you?" I spent probably a couple months solid just going through all this research, not because I was trying to find validity. I was trying to find somebody that couldn't verify the value. And it didn't exist. There was nobody that said, "No, this is bullshit. This doesn't work." And
Right.
so that doesn't exist either. You don't ever find, a position where somebody doesn't have an opposite position. But the
Always.
Norwegians came up with this concept of training, and they're doing it with their endurance athletes, the triathletes, the runners, the cyclists, whatever. Again, because there's money there. There's money for the research. Guys are, they're getting serious cash to do the work they're doing. And if you're an exercise physiologist, no more fun than being able to get a grant or paid to do research in the arena that you love, right? But that doesn't
Hmm.
exist here yet. This is too new. So I got a hold of these guys and I said, look, dude, I said, I'm working in a space that you guys haven't visited and these people never heard of. And I'm about to introduce it. And I need you to send me some stuff so I can start doing my work. And the guy goes, I don't think so. I said, what? I said, look, dude, I said, you never heard of it? Google it. He
Yeah.
goes,
He doesn't have the vision.
you just made my case. He says, if I have to Google it to find out what it is, you just made my case. And I said, fine. I said, I'm just going to buy the toys from you and I'm going to go to work. So I got some
Hmm.
guys in, put them in these sweatsuits, had them running outdoors in 90-degree heat. And I had these core temperature devices on their body so I can follow the metrics to see what the cost of work was and started to identify how to better approach this and came up with a training protocol for pre-race training, heat block training. So last
Yeah.
month of your outcome, so you're going to race in June. So you'd implement this probably in the beginning of May, and you'd throw these heat block sessions in periodically and on top of the training you're already doing. And you'll probably see about a 10% decrease in your heart rate relative to the same task you were doing before. You're going to see about a 20% increase in your VO2 max. You're going to see a better tolerance to the amount of heat that you're producing. And you're also going to be able to sweat better. And so the sweating coming in earlier cools your body better than typically would be the case. And this all happens, by the way, and from implementing the training, the greatest amount of improvements happen within about the first 5 sessions. So
Oh,
you
wow.
you could literally
That's quick.
change the way your body adapts to the work you
Overheat.
do
Yeah.
in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And
And,
so
you said 10% decrease in heart rate over that period of time
well,
as
flip the
well.
switch when your heart rate goes up. Um, well, let me back up. If you drop a liter of sweat, your heart
Hmm.
rate will go up 8 to 10 beats for the same workload. It doesn't take very long to drop a liter of sweat. You'd be surprised how quickly you could drop a liter of sweat through respiration, through just
Especially
coming
in.
off your body. You lose it quick. And by the way, the bigger you are, the quicker it
Hmm.
happens. I've got guys I've been
Yeah.
working with right now, and they're measuring their body weight to look at how much sweat they're losing, and they're losing upwards of 2 liters of sweat in an hour session. So 8 to 10 beats per minute increase in heart rate relative to that loss of or dehydration. And so if you can get control of that, your output's
Hmm.
going to improve dramatically. So I got on top of this and I started messing with it, and I have clients to this day that going into these competitions, they're doing these heat block training sessions.
Hmm. I love it. Are you familiar with Laird Hamilton at all? I'm assuming you probably are.
Who? Laird? Yeah, the
Yeah.
surfer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious to see if maybe he's familiar with this style of training as well, or because sometimes, especially with guys like that, sometimes they just do stuff because it's hard, and that's the only reason why they want to do it is just because of the challenge. But I know, that he does a lot of um, training, uh, even anaerobic training, in his sauna at like 200 plus degrees, where he's got like these he's a wild guy, but he's got those oven mitts that he's got on his hands, right? So he can actually touch the bike while he's on the bike in the in the sauna, and watching him do some of these challenges, I wonder if that's going on
Well,
in his head. And
first of all, that's a big mistake.
okay.
Yeah, because it's not just about how much heat you can tolerate.
Got it.
There's a particular window. I almost want to call it zone two just for fun, but it almost is a zone two workout. So the idea is the intensity is not very high. It's very
Hmm.
controlled, and then
Okay.
the amount of heat that you're trying to adapt to is very controlled as well. And so getting into a sauna, you have no idea how hot you are. You just know you're hot as shit, right?
Right.
Well, what we're talking about is having controlled environment. So there's a
Hmm.
particular window that you're trying to achieve, and you have to stay in it. So if you start noticing that your core temperatures are exceeding that level, you got to start stripping clothes off and things to try to control it. So it's not just about, oh my God, I stayed in the sauna for 45 minutes today at 200 degrees. That's not a good idea. That's actually gonna detract from your performance. So
Okay.
there's
I wonder if he knows that. Again, like I said, guys like Laird Hamilton, they're absolutely wild, and they just want to do wild stuff. And the harder the challenge is, the more they want to do it. But maybe he was onto something and just needs a little bit more of a controlled environment to kind of go through that. But I'm sure he's probably the type of guy you have to like rein in as often as possible because he's out there in the in the stratosphere.
yeah. Well, I mean, you get those guys, and I
Yeah.
imagine people hearing part of this podcast think, oh shit, I better go get hot, and that's not quite the way it works. There's definitely a formula, and it's been tried and proven, and it's not me. I mean, I'm just spouting off what I've learned through the research I've done,
Right on.
and so it's worked. So, at the end of the day, it's a new sport. It's a lot of fun. And guys like me, guys like you, we're out here just trying to, we're like squirrels trying to get another nut. We're trying to figure a
Yeah.
way to make this better.
Yep.
Um, I'm fortunate in that I don't have a lot of time being wasted on training. I'm spending a lot of time worrying about other people's training. It's what I do. It's my 24/7.
That's where we want you.
Yeah.
That's literally where we want you, Richard. We want you in the lab coming up with these wacky ideas of how to make all the athletes better. It's working, so let's just continue on that path.
Look, it's
And
good.
I'll work on trying to figure out how to get you to New York. I can figure that out. That won't be a
I'm telling
problem.
you that I am easy. I love I love interacting with the people. I love doing the
Cool.
work I do. I don't do this simply because I have to do it. I do this because it's a passion. I love doing it. So getting in front of a bunch of people and helping them get into a better place, that's my jam.
I
And
love
whether I
it.
do it here or whether I do it somewhere else is fine. It's just a matter of dollars and cents and time. That's all it is.
Yep.
But
Yep.
listen,
And that's what
Constantine,
it all comes down to.
one day if I don't get to see you, you got to get your butt down here. Grab some people and come down here.
Oh, yeah, that's going to happen. I've already talked to a bunch of people after, we spoke a little bit offline, and I told them that I was going to be talking with you today. A trip to Tennessee is 100%. I actually love Tennessee. I spent a little bit of time in Nashville and in Knoxville, and the areas there are unbelievable. How far are you outside of Nashville?
I'm in Franklin, which is like 25 minutes south of Nashville. Real close.
Perfect.
Yeah, Franklin is
Best of
amazing,
both
by
the
the way.
worlds.
Franklin is
Yeah.
amazing. It's probably the most tranquil community I've ever been in. The
Hmm.
neighbors are all great. When I'm running people, listen to this. You live in New York, this will kill you. I'm running
Yeah.
guys in the street, right? Some of them wearing wet plastic suits. I got them running down the road and I'm chasing them on the bike. And the
Yeah.
cars would be coming down the road and they slow down to about 5 miles an hour and go real wide, give us a lot of room. Then they wave.
Hmm.
Then they wave. In California, they
That
run
is,
you over,
yeah.
right?
Oh, in New York, yeah, for sure. In New York, it would be a hit and run without a doubt, and it would be on purpose.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's just the way that goes here. We're looking forward to it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me on and the opportunity of talking with you. You've been an invaluable source for us here, in New York, not only for Hyrox training, but obviously for running training and just knowing that there's somebody out there like you who's putting in their very important time, their very valuable time into studying and researching all these different things, just so that you can pass on the information to us. The content, keep it coming. We love it, and if no one's told you recently, man, you're killing it. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Listen, thank you so much for being here with me, and we've not seen the last of each other.
I heard that.
Yeah, take care. I'm going to shut it down.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.